I am going to talk about awareness and acquisition marketing just to kick us off. I hope it's not too early in the morning to hit you with that one, because that's where you have to spend the bucks. But we're going to talk about awareness, conversion and retention today. So just to kick off, this was the top of the session. This is Kevin Costner, and in the film Field of Dreams, when you think of that film, there's a line from it that is very connected to e-commerce, and it is, if you build it, they will come. You hear quite a bit. He wanted to build a baseball stadium, but it is the #1 e-commerce myth of all time. And from talking to a lot of you last night, the thing that comes up all the time is about the product catalogue, how much time and effort it takes, how much of a mammoth task it is to get the site ready and to get all of those nuts and bolts in place. So the #1 e-commerce myth is that you're done when you've got that far. You really aren't. Your journey is just starting. You're really just starting out. So what do we have to do? We have to go out and put ourselves out there. We have to go out into the world. We have to woo our customers like you would anyone you've just met. Introduce them to your brand, give them a reason to like you, and then hopefully you'll move them through the funnel of retention, conversion and retention marketing also. So I suppose, what do we do with that? We think about that in terms of a marketing funnel, and not to get too academic about it, but when your customer, I suppose, has never heard of your brand, what are the steps they move through? You're first going to have marketing that's going to hopefully acquire their attention. So you're out there with your attention grabbing tactics and your brand building tactics, and that is what I suppose makes a customer first aware of your brand. You'll hopefully pique their interest at that stage. They'll be interested in what you've got, interested in your brand, particularly the likes of social. They'll see you maybe a few times before actually coming to your site. And then when you get to your site, that's where you're creating your desire for the product. And, a lot of you are actually brilliant at that with product images, product descriptions, excellent on-site campaigns and on-site experiences, which we'll talk about later today as well. So creating the desire is the next stage of the funnel. And then you want them to take the action. Obviously, that's what we're all about. We all want to make money online. So we want them to take that action and make the purchase. And then that's not it. We want to get them to be repeat purchasers as well. So we want to get them into that retention and loyalty loop, which I suppose is really key. And it's obviously cheaper to retain someone than it is to acquire them. You'll hear that probably a lot today, and that stat is true, and you'll have found that from your own marketing efforts. Your likes of your email, your brand PPC and things will be cheaper than brand building acquisition campaigns. So if we look at this, attention, interest, desire, and action from acquisition marketing, like what is acquisition marketing? It's all these channels, the kind of in the news channels and the kind of more glamorous things that we might be attracted to when it comes to our e-commerce and our digital marketing. You have the likes of your Google ads, your Google shopping ads, which are hugely successful for many of you using your AB Commerce feed. Your social media advertising, which is obviously crucially important and becoming more and more important alongside your organic social activity. So your advertising is really important. And I know Paul is going to talk to you about paid media channels, and he'll get into this in more detail about fun things you can be doing with those channels. But I suppose in terms of hierarchy, those would be the heavyweight channels for me in terms of acquisition marketing when you're thinking about your mix. It's your Google ads, your Google shopping, and your social media advertising. Should be the cornerstones of your acquisition strategy, really. Then moving into nicer things like your influencer activity, your display ads and your video ads. And I've probably purposely tiered them really in order of how I would advise you would think about them in terms of return on investment, because everything on this list requires a marketing investment, okay? So that's not just investment in terms of paid media spend and agency spend, it's investment from your team as well, to be on it with the agencies, what they're doing, what campaigns you're feeding them, what products they're focusing on. So there's a massive investment there in terms of, the paid stuff that we know about, but also the time spent as well. So important to think of both of those. And I know you're all acutely aware of it anyway, particularly the costs with paid media and with agencies. So what mix should we choose then when you're thinking about your acquisition marketing? What is the ideal mix and how do we pick? Because it's very easy in digital in general to get your head turned, and you'll pick up the Sunday paper and there'll be a flashy article about a new tech office open in Dublin, and it'll be the hot topic for a set period of time. So how do we, as SMEs, pick where we focus our time and energy and our limited budgets. And I would advise you're always looking at your return on investment, and the other piece is looking at your target audience. So those two checks on everything you're choosing in terms of your overall mix are really, really key. So being close, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but being close to your numbers and what's working for you is really, really important. So if you have the chance to do something that's a brand building activity, and it's with an influencer who's got a large fee associated, is that the right place for that that budget at that particular time, or would that be better invested in maybe generic category or category terms in PPC? So thinking of that is really, really important. And the other piece is your target audience. Get really close to who those people are for your site. And you'll get that information in Google Analytics. You'll get it in AB Commerce Analytics. What are they looking at? What are they interested in? Who are they? And for those of you who are omnichannel, who have store footprints as well, you'll know your customer better than anyone. So thinking about who those people are and what media are they actually interacting with. So is your customer necessarily a social media person? What social network are they on? Are they on Facebook? Have they even heard of Snapchat? Have they even heard of TikTok? Are they interested in it? Maybe they're an email person. So thinking about your target audience and what they're likely to respond to should directly influence your decisions as to where to focus your energies and your budget. That is a lot of plates to keep spinning for a retailer. There's a lot to think about there. What campaigns am I going to do? How am I going to resource it? How am I going to do that alongside everything else that I'm meant to be doing in the store? And this came up quite a bit last night when I was chatting to a few of you, is how to cover all the bases. There's a lot going on, and how do we drive the sales? So I suppose the first thing we need to think about is the right team. So your team, I suppose, is your internal team and your external resources that are available to you. I suppose when we're just starting out and everything's new, there is a tendency, I suppose, to try to do everything in-house. But I suppose my advice there would be just to think about, the realistic side of things, like be realistic about your internal team. What can they cover? What can they cover in depth, and what can they cover, to the extent that you need them to, particularly at busy times of the year like Christmas. What do they have the skill sets for, and what are they interested in working on, and what can you free them up to work on? And then outside of that, your external resources, obviously, this is another conversation that comes up a bit, is about agencies. What pieces can you outsource to agencies? And that's something I suppose we'll talk about maybe in the panel discussion, as well as how to approach that. And how much you should be paying for that as well, which is a key area of interest. The next thing then is about planning and why plan. And this is when I'm like the school teacher being like, plan. And we always have to have our marketing calendar, and I always preach that, and I know it's really, really difficult when people are busy, but it is better when you're trying to hit targets and you're trying to keep your marketing engine running. It is better to be proactive than to be reactive with your marketing planning. If you know something is coming up, you're going to develop a better campaign, you're going to have better graphics, you're going to have more time to select your products that you want to be featuring, if that's going to drive a more effective trade for you because you're planning ahead for it. You're not flying by the seat of your pants trying to pull a reactive campaign together the Friday before Valentine's Day and your Valentine's Day is the Sunday or whatnot. So being proactive means that you can react. So when you've got your lovely proactive calendar and you've planned your calendar events against your forecasts, when you see hopefully Pippa O'Connor in your store, you can react. You can, push the button on a campaign and turn it around quickly because you've got the proactive piece done. So the reactive stuff you can do much faster. And then as well, I suppose, and we'll talk about it a bit, is when you've got your targets in place, and you know what financially you want to drive from the site and what your gross revenue should be, your marketing calendar should align with that, okay? So if you know you need to do a big November, your marketing calendar needs to get you there. So when you're planning your marketing events, you need to be thinking, this is what I hope to drive in January. So these are the marketing and trading events I need to put in place to get there, okay? So that's obviously going to help you trade better, it's going to help you make more money and drive more revenue, and it'll help you communicate within your teams and with your agencies as to what's coming up. So your agency won't be constantly ringing you saying, have you got anything, have you got anything, have you got anything? You've got that proactive plan in place. These are my campaigns. this is the category I want to focus on, this is the offer, and everybody in your team is briefed on it as well. So marketing planning is really important. And how do we do that? So how do we build a marketing calendar? You're probably familiar with the analogy of the stones in the jar. This is like a, excuse me, a life hack or advice for life about how to live a successful life and use your time wisely. And this was the concept is that the jar is finite. You can only get so much in the jar. So the analogy of the rocks in the jar is to get everything important in, you start with the important things first. You start with the rocks, then the pebbles, then the sand, and your jar is full. And approaching your marketing calendar should be the same, bear with me. When you're approaching your marketing calendar, your big rocks, what are your big rocks in the year? That's your big trading events, okay? So your Valentine's Day, let's say, depending on your sector. These are examples. So Valentine's Day, back to school, Black Friday. You all know they're coming up. You know probably in the summertime if you're going to do Black Friday. If you're a discount brand, are you a discount brand? Maybe they aren't trading promotions, maybe they're content pieces, but they're all coming up. So there's no reason not to lay them out in your calendar and have foresight of them, so you can brief your graphic designer, you can brief your team, you can start to develop good campaigns that you can also you run in store and have that cohesiveness. So your big rocks go in first. When you lay out your calendar, plan your big ones. And those heavy hitters should be connected to your forecast, okay? So again, if you want to have a big month, or you've got, you want Easter sale, you want a really big April, let's say, get those all in first, and get a handle on what trading value you've got from those campaigns. And those should be your big guys. When you have that done then, move on to your pebbles. So these are the ones that are maybe a bit more flexible. You still know you're going to do them, but a bit more flexible and, maybe a smaller impact trading-wise. So your last order dates and tactical promotions. So stuff that you might decide to do. Say, for example, someone from a department in the stores, like I've got a lot of stock on, whatever particular brand. You can react with your tacticals then, with a bit more flexibility. And then lastly is your sand. So this is your reactive stuff. You're very reactive. This has just happened. Let's pop that in. Let's get a campaign out around it, okay? So yeah, so your last thing that you're layering onto your calendar is your reactive stuff, okay? So if you take that approach, you're going to be covered for marketing activity. You're not going to go a month, 6 weeks with nothing going out. You're not going to starve your email channel of, decent campaign material, because, that can happen. And you're always going to have, a program of events that's connected to what you want to trade, the categories you want to trade, and crucially, the targets you want to hit as well. Because, as we say, if you build it, they will come. Not true. We have to make that effort to acquire. And lastly, this is a bit of a grim slide. Is it profitable? My last piece of advice, I suppose, on that one is to think like an accountant. And if any of you are accountants, actually, you have a head start. But make time for the numbers, okay? This is one that gets shelved a lot, I would say. Or from talking to you, this is what seems to be a pressure area. As Paul said last night, AB Commerce is analytics-based commerce. There are dashboards there. Just scroll down when you log in. Your dashboards are there with your numbers. And you need to make time for them, because successful e-commerce businesses, like the big guys, they have people, they have analysts whose job this is to analyze performance, look at acquisition campaigns, analyze return, and decide what to push. But it doesn't happen by accident, and a week can go very fast. So we need to make time for the numbers. And I would say pick a time in the week that's your Monday morning, half an hour to look at your Google Analytics and your AB Commerce. Because that will help you then to set your budget and your targets. You'll use your analytics, as I said. Think of your conversion funnel as well when you're looking at those numbers, because your acquisition marketing, and we'll probably talk about that as well, is more expensive than your retention marketing. So the only way to really understand if it's working for you or if you're happy with it is to look at those numbers and work out, is that actually a return that you're happy with? And the conversion funnel will help you with that. So if it's a brand building activity and you've worked with someone locally who, has a big profile or whatever, that piece of activity might be difficult to track, might be more expensive, on paper, than something very, very tactical or very, very brand specific, like, a PPC ad that you might be running. So be reasonable about those. And have realistic expectations is another one I would say. So I suppose if you are doing a brand activity, like a piece of influencer work or like a brand video, for example, or a social video, and you might be putting a lot of time and effort into that, you know, realistically, you might not see a one-to-one or a multiple return from that, because that's your brand building marketing at the top of the conversion funnel, and that's generating awareness. But your customer needs to move through the stages of the funnel before they're going to make an action, before you can actually track them. So your brand building activity, you know, harder to track, but let's be realistic about what that's going to drive for us in terms of return. And then test and learn. I'm saying think like an accountant and be close to the numbers and be tight with your money, obviously, but it is good to test and learn. If you've got the big rocks in place with the campaigns, you've made sensible decisions about your marketing mix and the channels you're going to use, and you've got all of that working and you're happy with it, test and learn the more glamorous pieces or the more, the toe in the water with the new stuff that you want to trial alongside your main strategy. So how can Magico help? Sort of lastly, and I know Ursula touched on this about the work packages. So we can support you with deep dives into various aspects of this. There are digital marketing health checks available. We can work with you on strategy development. We can support you on resourcing, if possible as well. And there's a range of options there. So, get in touch with Gillian on the digital marketing side if there's anything there you want to explore.